Hello, my name is Jacob Howe. I am a BCTC student. For my project, I researched the Blackfoot Indians, or the Niitsitapi. They originated in the Great Plains of Montana and the Canadian lands of Alberta and Saskatchewan. The name Blackfoot actually comes from the fact that they would actually color their moccasins into the color of black, which is also made of leather. Um, but that's where they would receive the name Blackfoot. Well, um, these Indians were also considered as adventurous and war-driven after taking over a vast land of the Great Plains, and they were happy where they were at that point. They would not move. They weren't crossing the mountains unless they were at war. The Blackfoot Indian um, was vast, but also once the U.S. got involved, they also had problems with the reservations. The problems included, poor maintenance, trash, and just very poor human resources. Um, they were very much in poverty, um, and these were considered one of the worst experiences that their entire history has included, was because of the fact that before the involvement of reservations and the white man, they were very well off. They were in control. They had their own Blackfoot nation. They were very powerful, um, and that is why most people actually would say that um, the reservation and the white man was quite literally the downfall of the entire tribal nations. Um, that is to cover the history and the struggle of the tribe itself. For the creation stories of the tribes, there is a very interesting one. There is a man who goes by the name of Napi. He is the creator. He is the sun. Uh, the sun, also known as Napi in that language, which actually means old man. He was believed to create the entire earth as we see it now. The rivers, the mountains, the prairies, all of the swamps. He was known to make it all, how fast, how slow it ran, how high the mountains were, how flat the lands were. In the story, it is told that he was on a raft with many animals. And as they floated between all of this nothingness, it was all water, he told a few select water divine animals, such as the beaver, muskrat. There was another one that I can't really pronounce. And it was decided, as the muskrat just dived down and was the only one who could go down, that he come back up, was dead, but also was clutching a piece of mud. As Napi took it from his hands, he created the land after he dried it, the mud, and it was what the land was created from. Um, this also is very important because of the use of clay to create each Indian tribe, which most tribes will actually use colors as well, such as red for most of the Cheyenne territories and the Cheyenne type clans that were most also associated with uh, like Cherokee anger, which is where they get a lot of that from. The Prairie and Plains Indians were created from yellow, which is also known as like the golden area of the country, which is where they could probably associate that color from. The most prominent point, as also alongside of the creation, was the buffalo chip and the stone story created within this story as well. The story entices on whether the tribal individuals would die or would they live forever. Napi pulled out his buffalo chip and said, if this floats, it will be that the tribe individuals would not die. If they do die, they would die for 4 days and come alive again. If it sinks, they will die and stay dead. As the ship floated, he said, "It is said." But the woman disagreed and says, "No. If the stone is thrown and it floats, it shall be as you said, with the dying for 4 days, and they will be back alive. But if it sinks, they are to die for those around them to remember them." Um, as she throws the stone, it sinks. Also, alongside that, ironically, a few days later, her son dies that she is made with, and she comes to him and says, "May we go back to your rule to bring him back alive?" 4 days later, he says, "No. When it is said, the rule of the land, it is said. There's no going back." And from then on, that was for the rule that they die, they die. There's no going back to remember them. Um, Alongside their creation, Napi also used his knowledge to show them how to make weapons and tools to kill the buffalo, which he had also mainly created for them to hunt and kill and to follow. Um, and that is where they would get their food from. On the side of things where it is used for their identity, as you said earlier, they would obviously wear their black moccasins to show that they are from the Blackfoot tribe. Alongside this, they was actually wearing clothing mostly made out of hide, most prominently buffalo hide, which is where the women would dry it out and they would create the cloaks from it and the clothing that they would wear. Women would wear seashells most of the time, or for their earrings. And men, the main jewelry pieces they would wear is if they were a well-established individual within the tribe, they would wear a bear paw on their necklace, and it would show that they were a very important individual within that tribe. um, for the tools itself and use of animals, that's actually backwards. They would use every inch of the animal and create their tools. Um, they would use every part of the buffalo and make everything from it. They would make tools, knives. They would make clothing, food, anything that they could possibly use from that animal. They did it. For the next part, where it talks about the tribal ideas of the family, they actually follow a lot of the same typical family ideals for a lot of tribes, where the men were the hunters and the providers of the family members, and when he is to receive a kill, that he would call upon the women and they would take care of the kill. They would skin it, take care of it, carry the meat. They would, they would take care of everything. They would cook it. They would use the skins. They would make things from the skins. They would use the bones. They would use things from the bones, tools, cooking utensils, anything they needed. They would use the bones. Sometimes they would use the tusks from some animals, and they would actually use those, and they would go on a ceremonial dresses like that for the women. For the next part, it's kind of a very underdocumented area that I have found. There's been not a lot of information given on this. There was only one site, which was nativelanguages.org, and that didn't really give me much of a background because that was only .org site I could also find that was very specific. The only information I could really gain was from a few videos talking over the grievances they had with their own government, which was actually ran by tribal leaders now, which was their officials. They were very unhappy with the use of money on the reservations. One man spoke of the fact that they were building a motel or a hotel on their land, but it wasn't being money well spent, as if while they're building a hotel, their own people were living in poverty. There was trash laying everywhere. There was a lot of human resource problems. Children were living in poverty. There was very poor um, establishment for children to learn in. The schools could be um, way better equipped per se. The kids had reading problems all around. Um, there was a lot of drug problems, mainly alcoholics from the tribes, um, and they not only hurt themselves, but the children were hurt as well. On the language, the most known language of the whole area actually was the Algonquin language, which was actually spoken by the entire Blackfoot Confederacy. Um, Within this, it's the same as if the Cherokee Nation or the whole southeast region, say a lot of other nations, they actually had probably similar languages that they would speak to be able to communicate with their own, agreements throughout their tribes. Um, the Blackfoot, these tribes that they had within their nation would speak the Algonquin language, which stretched all the way from Montana all the way to the Canadian areas. Um, and this was, though, because the tribe themselves would not really interact um, very heavily, but when they did work together, or whenever they did do their religious ceremonies, which is the sun dance to celebrate Napi and their existence because of him, it'd be the same thing as us going to church. They would celebrate him for all that they have, and they would do so for almost 4 days. Um, but this would mainly be the only interactions they would have. They would go through their religious beliefs, through wars, or tribal meetings for the chiefs. They were very scarce in their own gatherings themselves, but they did speak similar languages for them to communicate with. On a literature side of things, the tribes used meaningful stories to give the teachings that the elders would want the killed children to know, in order to instill certain attributes within these children in hopes that they will be more like the people or the goodness in the stories. Um, the story that I found very interesting was about Katowice, which is the blood clot boy. Within the story, he is born from a single blood clot within a buffalo, and this is after a stingy son-in-law has killed him, has killed the buffalo, um, and has left his father and mother-in-law in a state of poverty, to where the youngest daughter is having to throw them scraps for them just to survive. Um, and even though that the father-in-law goes with the son-in-law every morning to hunt, they do not receive a single portion of the meat. Well, one day, the father-in-law steals the blood clot just for his wife and him to feed off of, to stay barely alive. In doing this, the mother begins to cook it, and it becomes a baby. This baby becomes known as Katowice, which is actually the word for blood clot in the Algonquin language, which is what gives the story itself the magical origin. Because you think, blood clot boy, wow, this is weird. Um, with this, he is known to have helped the elderly man kill a buffalo. And as the elderly man is skinning it, the son-in-law comes into him and is ready to kill him for going against him and hunting himself. And as he is almost to kill the older man, the hero named Katowice comes in and kills the son-in-law, in turn also punishing 3 daughters that he had given to this man, in hopes that he'd become a very well stepson. Well, with these 3 daughters, the youngest, as mentioned before, was nice to her elders, and thrown them scraps, but in doing so, she was only punished less because of the fact that she did not do anything more to help her own parents. With this, he is also known for going and slaying monsters to be able to make the tribes around them better. Since he's known for killing these monsters, he is known as a hero because of the fact that he had gone out from tribe to tribe slaying these people that were wicked and these monsters who were taking from their own people. On the standing of the tribe today, they're still around, very much so. There is 10,000 known Blackfoot Indians in the state of Montana on the reservation itself. There's actually 15,000 documented that were staying in the original areas of the tribe in the 2 Canadian provinces. And as said before, these tribes are dealing with many troubles actually on the reservation, that they are dealing with a lot of poverty, poor and malnutrition within their systems. Their children's are very well off in their state, that they just don't care anymore because of the fact that they're already been in this point for so long that they've almost given up. And it seems like that their parents are almost in helping because of the fact that there's so many alcoholic and drug use within the reservation that cause the parents not to care anymore because of the pain they feel due to the poor treatment they're receiving. It's their way of dealing. In comparison of the tribe, the culture, and their distinguishing attributes to my own attributes in my culture, it is very heavy, and it does almost enlighten you to see what happens within your own life. They were heavy in their beliefs, their traditions, and their religion. They were very well conservated. I mean, they were extreme conservists whenever it comes to using their land to the absolute meaning. They would use every aspect of every animal that they came across that they killed, such as the buffalo. With the buffalo, they would always make their skin into food. They would make it into tools. The intestines were used even. I mean, there was no end to what they could possibly think that they could use this for. And it was, well, they had plenty of buffalo, and that is why this worked. Because whenever they needed it, they would only need a few. Well, until the white men came along and started killing so many of them, that is when this becomes such a very big, chaotic uproar, because of the fact that it's like, that is our life. That is what we have to live from. And that is why even now that the reservations are intact, they're so troubled with what's going on, because that was all they knew. That was all they knew how to do, was to use animals in the way of the land to live. And now they're introduced to living in houses and driving cars and having jobs like us, instead of hunting and fishing and using their original ways of life to live. They're in such a deep hole that they're almost never going to claw themselves out of. And there's been many speculation on how the tribe has even existed due to these problems, because like many other Plains tribes, there was many fallouts. There's many tribes who've gone extinct in the sense that there's no more people to carry it on. But there's also many thriving ones like this one that tend to survive by the passion of their people, which would make sense since the tribe itself was a very war-hungry nation. With this, I will thank you for watching my presentation. A lot of my information on the literatures and the speakings of the stories of the tribes come from nativelanguage.org. There's not a real URL for YouTube videos, and if I could, I'd give them to you. But there is many of them that I use to get a lot of the information from leaders within the tribe that were actually underneath the government officials, so they were giving a recap on what's actually going on in the reservations. But I also use them as a lot of my information, and there's a lot of websites out there that are also helped confirm a lot of the words that I've used, such as Napi, and the word for Native American, the Blackfoot tribe, which is Nitsatipi or Tapi, whichever way it is said, that's kind of hard. And there's many other words, Katawees, that is very well used because of the fact they actually have a translator for you to help, and a pronunciation aid to help you see and hear the way it sounds whenever someone else is saying it. And there's also very interesting videos as well on people in YouTube who actually give lessons on their language. Thank you for watching my video, and I will enjoy reading on the comments. Alright, thank you.